What's up, San Antonio? What's going on, South Texas? This is the Area 210 podcast coming at you from the west side of San Antonio. My name is Mike Jimenez. Joe Garcia has the day off. Now, first and foremost, we do have the chat up and running right now. Gonna ask you guys a question. Can you all hear me? And am I too loud or do I sound okay? Typically at this point, Joe is adjusting my volume, but I'm flying solo today. I'm doing solo today, so everyone's saying that there's a voice delay, so we'll try to clear that up as time goes on. Again, my name is Mike Jimenez. This is the Area 210 podcast. Let me know if there's any delays. I might have to change this onto a different Wi-Fi. Maybe my hotspot might work better. You all let me know. A little on the loud side, they said. Let me fix that. All right. The chat line powered by MCS General Contracting. How does that sound? I lowered it a little bit so everyone is okay. All right. Tex-Mex Frank is in the house. Neff Ozuna's in the house. Sam Salinas, July 26th, Tony Ornelas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Guess what we're talking about today, guys? We're talking about the Spurs. The Spurs and the trade rumors that developed yesterday thanks to Shams Charania and a report out of the ESPN station out there in Sacramento, California, involving De'Aaron Fox, a one-time All-Star, who, by the way, let's get this going here. I need people to understand De'Aaron Fox. That guy's a super stud basketball player. If he played for the Chicago Bulls, if he played for the Miami Heat or the New York Knicks, the dude would be a huge star, okay? But he plays in the middle of nowhere in Sacramento that no one cares about, a smaller market than San Antonio. And because of that, people are like, it's just De'Aaron Fox. It is East Coast bias against him. The guy is a super stud out there, man. And it's one of those things where I look at it, and if a player of that caliber wants to play for the Spurs, I don't care if it's for a season and a half, you have to trade everybody you can to make it happen, okay? Now, obviously, you don't trade Wemby, right? And in a perfect world, you don't trade Stephon Castle. Perfect world. But at the end of the day, if they want anybody else, if they want a combination of any other 3 or 4 players, you do it. If it's Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sochan, buy. Or as Joe Garcia likes to say, gone. Gone. That is the thing. And it's just one of those things where you look at it and you need to have superstars to win the NBA. Sochan is replaceable. Devin Vassell is replaceable. Keldon Johnson is replaceable. These are all just dudes. You need to have stars out there. And I'm looking at De'Aaron Fox's stats, and I'm not saying that the player comp is the same, but I'm looking at the stats, and I'm thinking to myself, doesn't this remind you of DeMar DeRozan when DeRozan was in his prime? Right now, he's averaging 25.2 points per game, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. A career high of 5 rebounds. Guys shot 36% from 3 last year. What more do you want, Spurs fans? Lots of comments coming in right now. Let's go ahead and see what's going on. Let's see here. Tony Ornelas bringing up the fact that the Atlanta Hawks are on a 6-game losing streak and Jalen Johnson has a season-ending injury. That means the pick that the Spurs have of Atlanta's, which again is unprotected, is getting better by the day. As of right now, that's the 11th best pick in the draft. But again, if they lose 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row, they have some really big matchups coming up. They've got Milwaukee, they've got Cleveland, and they even have a game against the Spurs in the next couple of weeks. Again, that pick is getting better by the day. Others talking about what's going on. Okay, let's see here. Any other good comments coming here? I apologize. Typically, Joe is running this, so I'm trying to do 3 things at one time. JHNSB reaches out and says, De'Aaron Fox averaged 27 points per game last season. Name the last Spur to do that. I'll wait. Neff Ozuna coming up and saying, he's a stud. Of course he is. July 26th saying, Jalen Johnson's and the Atlanta pick looking really, really good right now because of that injury to Jalen Johnson. Here's the thing, man. The Spurs have to make moves because there's so many people on Spurs Twitter who, I know we're just fans, right? We're not R.C. Buford. We're not Pop. We're not Mitch Johnson. We're not in that building there over at the Rocket Lock and Terra. But the fact of the matter is that Wemby is on year 2 of a 4-year deal. And I know that De'Aaron Fox is going to be a free agent at the end of next season. And the big question is how much is it going to cost to pay him? He turned down a $50 million a year offer to stay with Sacramento. So it's going to cost about that much to keep him, right? But you look at it this way, Vassell and Keldon basically equal 50. Vassell makes 29 million. Keldon makes about 18 million. Right there, they take Zach Collins' contract, makes it even better, right? I'd rather have De'Aaron Fox and two scrubs than have Vassell, Keldon, and Sochan. Sorry, that's just the way that it works, right? You need stars to win in the NBA. You can't get 12 backups. You can't get 12 role players to win any playoffs, right? Any championships or even make the playoffs. We've already seen that. Jesse A. reaches out with a very good point. Says, everyone on the roster, we know what and who they are. No potential all-stars. That's right. Devin Vassell will never be an all-star. Jeremy Sochan will never be an all-star. Stephon Castle, the verdict is still out, right? Verdict is still out when it comes to him. But I look at it this way, man. You know, De'Aaron Fox is 27 years old, if I'm not mistaken. He's 7 years into the NBA. He's been playing in the middle of nowhere in Sacramento, California. It almost feels as though Spurs fans don't realize how good this guy is. He's an amazing player, and in fact, last season, led the league in steals. So not only did he average 27 points last year, he led the league in steals. In a perfect world, what you want to have happen is you want to have the Spurs hold on to their players and maybe just kick out Devin Vassell and Keldon and a couple of picks. That's in a perfect world, because if you did that, you'd have a starting lineup of what? Castle, Fox, Barnes, Sochan, and Wemby, right? That's a pretty good lineup right there. That's going to get you 48 to 50 wins right there, because that's how good De'Aaron Fox is. Spurs right now have been flirting with the 500 marker most of the season, right? We ended 2024 above 500. Right now, we're a few games below 500. But take out Chris Paul. Take out Chris Paul. I know he's averaging 8 assists per game. Take out Chris Paul, a 39-year-old point guard, and insert 27-year-old De'Aaron Fox and his 25, 26 points per game, which is in the top 12 in the NBA right now. Insert his 6 assists, his 5 rebounds, and his 2 steals per game. How many more wins do the Spurs have? How many more wins? What is that? That's got to be good for 6 or 7 wins, right? That puts you in the top 6 to make the playoffs. You're not talking about a play-in with De'Aaron Fox. You're talking about making the top 6 and making the playoffs. Look at the arms race going on down the road in Houston. I know y'all joke with me because I spend so much time in the Houston area. Look at the arms race over there with Jalen Green and Şengün and Amen Thompson and all those guys over there in Houston. We are in an arms race to get into the playoffs, and we can't get there with Devin Vassell. We can't get there with Keldon Johnson. We can't get there with Jeremy Sochan. You need star players to get there, and to have Wemby go out there and not have anybody of significance playing alongside of him is effing criminal. It is criminal to not give him anybody to play with. David Robinson, when he came into the league, had Sean Elliott, had Terry Cummings, had Mo Cheeks, had all of those good veteran players, some of the past All-Stars. Terry Cummings was a past All-Star. Sean Elliott became an All-Star. They had that talent. Look who Duncan was surrounded with David Robinson, surrounded with a more mature Sean Elliott, surrounded with a lot of good players around him, and ultimately you drafted Manu and you drafted Tony. The Spurs are letting Wemby play the first 2 seasons with nobody beside him. Barnes is a good player. What do we call him? We call him the Toyota Corolla, right? He's very reliable, but he's not flashy. 39-year-old point guard and Chris Paul. It's been a great experiment. He's good for Stephon Castle's development. He's good for all that. I get that. But we have to get away from the losing mentality. And the losing mentality is we're just going to keep all these picks. You know what? If I was to say this, that those 2 picks were going to turn into Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham, would you care? Because those are first rounders that the Spurs have had the past few years. We had Malachi Branham. We've had Blake Wesley. We've had Luka Samanic. We've had Josh Primo. We've had these guys as first rounders the last 3 or 4 years. Are they any good? So holding on these picks means nothing half the time unless they're a top 10 pick. And even that's questionable. Spurs got Sochan at number 9, got Vassell at 11. So ask yourself the question, do those picks matter? Or as our good friend Chris Leha from MCS General Contracting says, F them picks. Because it means nothing. It's just hope. You know, the funny thing is that I would hope and pray as a Spurs fan that Stephon Castle develops into De'Aaron Fox. So we're going to hold on to Stephon Castle, who I love, who's my favorite Spur not named Wemby, in hope that he becomes the player who already wants to play with us. Makes absolutely no sense to me. Absolutely no sense to me. Lots of comments coming on in. I'm going to go ahead and read a few over here. Tony Nell is saying he wants to leave Sacramento. He's averaging 37 minutes per game. They're using and abusing him in Sacktown. Spurs will give him a 30-minute load management help. Beyond all that, I mean, so Domantas Sabonis is a very good center. He's a top 5 center in the West. But I think he's looking at it from a different perspective. If you're De'Aaron Fox, you either want to go to a big market and become a star, or you want to play with the star, a superstar that's going to take you to another level internationally. There are not a lot of star players who want to come to San Antonio. I'm sorry. If you are a young African-American man, chances are you do not want to be here. You want to be in LA. You know why? Because LA is cool. You want to be in Miami because Miami is even more cool. You want to be in New York, media capital of the world. You want to be in Chicago. Heck, you even want to be in Toronto where Kawhi went to. San Antonio is the sticks of the NBA, right? San Antonio is out there with Sacramento and Indianapolis and all of these places where we're the small market teams, Cleveland Cavaliers, Milwaukee Bucks, right? So for a star to come out and say that he wants to play in the Alamo City, that's a big deal. Here's the thing about De'Aaron Fox. He's a Texas guy. He played high school ball in Katy, Texas. His family's out there. That's a 3-hour drive. I know because I do that drive every week, right? It is a 3-hour drive to Katy, 2.5 hours actually, because you're not actually going into Houston. So if he wants to play for San Antonio, you got to do what you got to do to get him here. And if it took Sochan and Castle, guess what? You do it anyway, man, because it is the Spurs' job to line up Wemby with the best players available. Because again, Tony and Manu played with Tim. He had all-stars flanked on either side of him. Robinson had all-stars flanked on either side of him as well. And what's Wemby doing? Playing with Sochan, who shoots 29% from 3. Playing with a 39-year-old point guard in Chris Paul. Playing with Harrison Barnes, who's on the tail end of his career. Playing with a undrafted guy in Julian Champagny. Get the F out of here. Get him some players. Get him some A-list talent, man. July 26th comes out and says, we should make a bet to see if Brian Wright will flop or not on these opportunities that we have. Tony says, I would love to keep CP3 on the bench still. Flip CP3, man. Let's get something for him. He's a free agent. He's not going to re-sign with the Spurs. Flip him for something, because is he going to want to back up next year if he wants to play another year? Is he going to want to back up De'Aaron Fox? I don't think so. Tavarius are saying Sochan and Castle are bad on the court together. Did you notice that in Paris the other day when the Spurs played? Castle came in the game, Sochan got out. Sochan comes into the game, Castle came out. Why? They're like oil and vinegar. They do not mix. They do not mix. They don't play well together. And here's the thing. Wemby plays well with Sochan. Wemby plays well with Castle. But Castle and Sochan don't play well together because they are both liabilities when it comes to shooting from the outside. And you can't have two players in the year 2025 who can't shoot a 3 beyond 34% on either side. Chris Gonzalez says with Fox, we get about 7 or 8 wins, more wins than what we have now. So think about it that way. If the Spurs, I don't know what the Spurs record is right now, 20-23, something like that. You flip it and the Spurs are 25-18. That's a good team. That's a playoff team, right? We'll have some more comments coming on in. Again, our super chat powered by MCS General Contracting. Thank you so much, MCS, for doing what you do. It's one of those things where we're looking at Sochan and asking ourselves the question, is he ever going to develop into a star? And you know I've been critical of Sochan from day one because I just don't think that it's winning basketball. But I will say this, though. If De'Aaron Fox comes to the Spurs and the Spurs somehow kept Sochan and Castle, that would be the best thing in the world for Sochan long term. Because what Sochan does is the dirty things, the little things, the things that don't show up on the score box score rather. He doesn't create a shot, right? But if you tell Sochan, hey, look, just go out there and rebound. Just go out there and focus on your defense. Just do what you do well. Having a De'Aaron Fox takes the load off of Sochan, so Sochan does not have to feel like he's going to be the person who needs to knock down threes, the person who needs to create a shot. Just have him do what he needs to do. Sochan is not an ideal number 2 guy on the team. He's not an ideal number 3 guy on the team. But you can convince me that he's an ideal number 4 or 5. That for sure. That I can see. That's like saying Drew Holiday is an ideal 2 guy for Boston. He's not. It's like saying Derek White's the ideal 5 guy, a 2 guy for Boston. He's not. They're the ideal 3, 4, 5 guy, and that's what we need Sochan to be. But you can't have Sochan in that position if you don't have an ideal number 2 on the team, the Robin to Wemby's Batman, is when it comes to it. Tavares is talking about the Rockets developing players better than the Spurs have. Hey, man, when Chip England left the Spurs, that was a big deal, man. I don't think we realized it at the time, but Chip England, the shooting coach of the Spurs, when he went to OKC, became a big deal. Noah Bettis is in the chat saying we ain't winning ish if Zach Collins is still on the roster. Zach Collins has 1 more year on this deal. I believe next year he's going to be making north of $16 million on this team. Jordan Schneider saying, Cook! We already got 2 young guards wasting away on the bench. Doesn't it piss you off, Jordan, whenever you see Castle come off the bench? Castle is arguably the 2nd or 3rd best defender on this team, and I hate seeing him on the bench. He plays better when he's a starter. Sam Salinas is bringing us back to the day when Sean Elliott was a rookie, when David Robinson was too. And the others you mentioned were on the verge of being just guys. 5-0 was NBA ready and single-handedly turned down other fortunes. Who does that now? Wemby didn't. Well, here's the thing. Wemby came into the league at 19. He just turned 21. David Robinson not only went to college, but had his 2-year naval commitment along the way. So it's a little bit apples and oranges. The point I was trying to make was that he had good players. Now, Terry Cummings was on the backside of his career, but Terry Cummings was still somebody who could average 18 to 20 points per game. And the Spurs had players around Robinson who had been around the block, okay? How many playoff victories does Keldon Johnson have? None. How many does Devin Vassell have? None. You can go up and down the roster, and the answer is 0, unless you get to Harrison Barnes, and that's just maybe a handful, right? CP3 has gone to battles, but CP3, again, is 39. So I know it's apples and oranges when it comes to it all. Matt Lerma coming up and says, Unhinged, Unfiltered Mike is a special treat on a Wednesday morning. Good morning, Matt Lerma. That's right, man. I have to bring the fire today because I have no Joe today. And I will tell you this. I did sports talk radio for 3 years here in San Antonio. And I used to love chopping it up with Rudy J and James Pledger. I used to love hanging out with Jason Minnick, Joe Ryan-Eagle, Rob Thompson, RJ Ochoa. It was interesting having that dynamic where you're going one-on-one, right? But when you're by yourself, it's a beast, man. It's a beast to be entertaining when it comes to it all when you're by yourself. Leah saying, LMAO, laughing my ass off. Y'all want top 10 picks for what? Spurs coaching staff is whack as hell. We have a new, I haven't seen this number before, SR 2001 saying, need to make a move for proven talent. You can't keep drafting 19 and 20-year-olds. Furthermore, if we don't make a move, Victor will have the ultimate move, as in he is moving on. Again, we are, as Spurs fans, spoiled. And why are we spoiled? We are spoiled because we had David Robinson play his entire career in San Antonio. Tim Duncan, entire career in San Antonio. Manu Ginobili, entire career in San Antonio. Don't forget that after 3 years with the Spurs, what did Tim Duncan want to do? He wanted to leave. Remember? He had taken trips to Orlando, met with Doc Rivers. He was going to join Grant Hill over there in Orlando. Tim Duncan, after 3 seasons in San Antonio, wanted to get his ass out of the Alamo City. Remember that. Who was his head coach at the time? Greg Popovich. He wanted out, and they fumbled the bag. Reportedly, and I don't know if this is conspiracy theory or not, but reportedly it was because they wouldn't allow Tim Duncan to bring his wife on the team plane. And he was like, nah, well, the Spurs allow me to do that, so I'll just go back to the Spurs. Imagine if Tim had left. Where would the Spurs be? Would the Spurs even be in San Antonio if Tim Duncan wasn't on this team? There was other news that went on this week involving the Spurs. Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs and Ken's 5. We're going to go over that in a minute, but I see more comments coming on in. I apologize. They're kind of lagging in my system here. Mexican Jeter comes out and says, we got to take advantage of an all-star player that actually wants to be in San Antonio. It is so rare to have a player that doesn't dream of LA or New York as soon as they hit free agency. Leja coming out and saying Spurs fans want to hold on to the Charlotte and Bulls picks because of quote-unquote value. Get the hell out of here, he says. Interesting point. SR 2001 bringing up a point, and I've heard this before, but I don't have any verification that apparently De'Aaron Fox's wife has family in San Antonio. Sam Salinas says, so what you're saying, Mike, is that it's great for Sochan because he could ride the coattails and still be a fan favorite with stupid hair. Ooh, interesting. Tony saying that Sochan gets pressed more than anybody on this show. Sam also says that fans did realize Chip leaving was a bad thing, but I don't think they realized how bad. Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs at Ken's 5. Is Castle really a deal breaker for Fox? It's not a deal breaker, Jeff, as much as it pains me to say. It's not a deal breaker. It's just one that would hurt my feelings. I get over it, but it would hurt. You look at the Spurs roster. Devin Vassell is who he is. Never going to be an all-star. He's going to be a good player, averaging 15 to 18 points per game for his entire career. Keldon Johnson's a 12 to 15-point guy. Zach Collins sucks. Champagne is, a decent player. We all know what these players are. Spurs fans hold on to hope that Sochan and Castle are going to be stars. And you look at Sochan, and I don't see it. I think he's a good piece. He's a decent player. But I don't see star potential there. So that's why I don't think it's a deal breaker for that. Castle could potentially be a star in this league. If he develops a shot, if he can get a good shooting coach and get to 35, 36% from three, that's the only thing that's preventing him from being a two-way star in this league. Now, I'm not saying superstar, but I'm saying in the terms of like a Drew Holiday, Derek White type of scenario, that type of thing. Or does he have the potential to take it to a level of SGA, who also had Chris Paul by his side when Chris Paul played for OKC for that 1 year when it was SGA's second year in the NBA? It's not a deal breaker, man. It's not. Castle is not a deal breaker. But I found it interesting because Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs and Ken's 5, you can follow him at Jeff G Spurs Zone on Twitter, posted a video from AM 1310, I believe, in Sacramento, where he had the sports talk guys over there going, why would we want anybody from that Spurs roster? They said, Sochan's okay, Castle's okay, Vassell's okay, but for De'Aaron Fox, an all-star, who averages 26 points per game, who led the league in steals last year, who's one of the best players they've ever had in that franchise's history. So think about it from their perspective. We think about it from our perspective all the time. We think about it as in like, oh, of course we want De'Aaron Fox, but, let's send them these players. You have another team that needs to agree to this, right? And they have a fan base over there who wants certain things. And the fan base, do you think the fan base is going to get excited about a Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, 2 or 3 first-round picks? They're not going to get excited about that. But that might be the best of what they can get because who has leverage in the situation? Leverage in the situation belongs to Rich Paul, and it belongs to De'Aaron Fox. Why do they have the leverage? It's because they've told the organization, they've told the Kings, we want to trade because we're not going to re-sign with you guys. You can have us for one more year and get nothing for us. Or you could pull a trade and, by the way, we want to go here. We want to go to San Antonio. But there's other teams that have been mentioned. The Miami Heat have been mentioned as a potential landing spot. Houston Rockets as well. Houston has a lot of young talent over there. That's probably the second to Oklahoma City, the best talented young roster out there. We are in an arms race, and we're getting our asses handed to us in that arms race. We need to have all-stars out there. Jesse A says, Fox has a big ego. He ran Mike Brown out of Sacramento. Is Mitch the guy that can handle that? Maybe not. But here's the thing. I'd rather have players with big egos on the team and a questionable coach than have the coach I want with bad players. Players win championship, coaches don't. Sam Flynn is saying, you're making my point. Stop ignoring the fact that these guys coming to the NBA aren't ready. It's like it takes years now, and it's been detrimental. Cap 210 says Spurs are scared to pull the trigger on those draft picks. Only a matter if we got Wemby. Dude, we only had a 14% chance of getting Wemby. Mexican G reminding us that Harrison Barnes got those playoff wins with Golden State. You're right. My bad. SR 2001 asking if I'm Husky alumni. I am, and I'm right off the intersection of Ingram and 410 as we speak. I'm about 2 blocks from Holmes High School right now at my parents' house. By the way, for those of you who say that I am not a real Spurs fan and you jackasses calling me Space City Mike, here's a photo of my dad. My dad's walking around right now. Here's a photo of me and my dad. We were at one of the Spurs finals games back in the day. Badass, dude. Badass. Let me put this back up over here. So very nice. Very nice. What else y'all got? Bear County Social Apparel saying Fox's wife went to Johnson High School. Stud Matt says, I think Pop in the front office are grooming CP3 to coach the next decade of Spurs basketball with Fox and Wemby. Sith coming out and saying, Fox heard about my fight at Oyster Bake. Now he's reluctant to sign because of how intimidating I am. Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs asking the question, do you think Brian Wright will ultimately have scared money to deal for Fox? You know, Brian Wright has an incomplete grade with me. There have been bad picks. He was the assistant GM when Sumanic was picked. You had that whole Josh Primo thing, and we don't know what happened because of non-disclosure agreements. We didn't know who knew what, when, and where. I mean, I'll never forget. But you look at Brian Wright collecting these picks, and the thing about these picks is that at some point you've got to pull the trigger. You can't be selling hope all the time. You got to do something. We're seeing that going on right now in Frisco with the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have been treating their fans to just hope. That's all they do is say, hey, you know, hope for a new year, You know, we're going to hope with this new offensive coordinator, this new coach, this new whatever. And all they offer is hope, but they don't do anything. The Cowboys didn't sign any major free agents. They're not wheeling and dealing to move up in the draft. They're falling back in the draft. They're doing things that are not providing hope. When it comes to the Spurs and when it comes to Brian Wright, a lot of the moves that he's done have been good. You know, we had that trade for DeJounte Murray, and they said it was 3 first-rounders, but really it was 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, and a swap, right? So is what it is, and we'll see. You know, Jalen Johnson injury might make it better for the Spurs because that pick might fall into a better position for us. The Spurs flipped DeMar DeRozan for pick. They flipped Thad Young for a pick. The Spurs have gotten something for Derek White. Now, what did it manifest? What did it turn into? I mean, it didn't turn into anything, though. You know, we got Malachi Branham. We got Blake Wesley. We got players like that. We haven't flipped anybody for anything of significance. And that's the thing. I think that's the frustration that Spurs fans have, is that they're telling us, hey, I know you guys traded the number 8 pick, which could have been Dillingham or Connect or it could have been anybody else, right? You flip that for a 7th grader, a 2031 pick. At some point, Spurs fans, and I think Wemby, are going to want the team to do something. Go when you play poker, and I play poker. I've played a couple of World Series of Poker events back in the day. You can't just sit at the table and do nothing. What ends up happening is the blinds keep coming around and you lose money. And at some point, you're going to be forced to go all in anyway. You got to make some moves. And at some point, Mitch Johnson's got to put on his big boy, not Mitch Johnson, Brian Wright needs to put on his big boy pants and actually do something with these picks. Actually do something. Why were they created in the first place? To get a star. Now you have a star that wants to come, who averages 26 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and led the league in steals last year. Now he wants to come join this roster. Do you now, Brian Wright, have the balls to pull the trigger? Is it going to be popular to get rid of Sochan? Is it going to be popular to get rid of Castle? No. But do you know how long it'll take for us to forget about those guys? 3 games. De'Aaron Fox is that good. This is like trading for DeMar DeRozan in his prime with a little bit better of a 3-point shot. He has the same vibes to me. Now, Locked on Spurs and Ken's Five's Jeff Garcia was telling me, was on Twitter earlier, and I want to find that tweet that he had where he was talking about there was another potential trade proposal out there, not involving De'Aaron Fox, but it was Brandon Ingram. Now, Brandon Ingram has been disgruntled for a long, long time. I believe he's a free agent at the end of the season. But the question becomes, can you get something for Brandon Ingram? Now, Brandon Ingram is a good player, right? Plays the 4 position. Bit of a bully out there. I don't mind his play. But what would it take to pry him away? And I'm looking at it right here. Here it is. The offer would be Brandon Ingram and Daniel Tice in exchange for Zach Collins, Keldon Johnson, and 2 second-rounders. Now, keep in mind, Brandon Ingram is going to become a free agent, but Brandon Ingram is a decent player. We remember him with the Lakers, remember him with New Orleans. But Brandon Ingram hasn't been playing much this year because of injury, but when he does play, he averages in the low 20s, averages about 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's kind of a multi-tool player. Would you want a Brandon Ingram? Dude, I'd want a Brandon Ingram just for getting Zach Collins off the roster. Just get Zach Collins off the roster. I don't care. I would trade Zach just to get him off the roster. And if that means that Brandon Ingram is on a contract year this year, that means that free agency money comes up now. Keep in mind, the Spurs are 2 years into Wemby's contract. They have a team option for years 3 and 4. And then you have the Supermax deal that comes after that. What is that going to be for Wemby? Spurs are probably going to have to pay Wemby about $75 million per year when it's all said and done. Wemby's probably going to be the first $100 million guy. Head on the fifth saying, I'm struggling. Well, it is what it is, man. Where is Joe? Joe is taking a personal day. Joe's taking a personal day. Has stuff to take care of today. But he will be back tomorrow. Tim Gonzalez coming out saying Brandon can play the point guard too, Mike, because I've seen him play the point. When you average 6 assists per game, I mean, you have some handles there, right? You do have some handles. But, first and foremost, want to give some love also to MCS General Contracting. Do we have the video here? Let's see here. Let's give some love to MCS. Do we have it? We have other videos. I had to do that one, dude. I had to do that one. Did we power this up? No. You know what? I'm going to look for a couple of things, and let's Let's see here. Nope, we don't have it. So don't forget to give MCS General Contracting a call. They do a fantastic job when it comes to that diamond concrete, that diamond heart concrete. They do a fantastic job. I was one of their clients as well last year. They did a sidewalk for me. Drew Show coming in with a $5 super chat and 47 cents saying, so we're going to do a trade machine fan fiction show today, Mike. Fox is a cryberry baby punk. They traded 2 all-star point guards away for him. Still disgruntled. Dude, wouldn't you be disgruntled if you played in Sacramento too? I mean, what is Sacramento? Sacramento is just a small market team that's perpetually at 500. They're never bad. They're never good. They just always suck. But is it fan fiction? It's not fan fiction, dude, if Sham Sharani is reporting it. It's not fan fiction if the Sacramento media is reporting it. So that's what makes it different. This isn't like one of those things where it's like the fansided.com type of thing, or even the sporting news, which has gone to complete garbage these days. It's not one of those things. It is actual sports media, people in the know who know Rich Paul, who know the agents, who know the Clutch Sports of the world, and they know what's going on. And they're saying, De'Aaron Fox wants out. He wants out. He has a preferred destination. That preferred destination is San Antonio. How is that fan fiction? That is what's actually being reported by national media. I trust 2 people back in the day. It was Woj and I trust Shams, right? Those guys have like 99% accuracy. So I don't think it's fan fiction. The question becomes, what do you do to send a player out? You know, who has the leverage when it comes to this whole situation? Is the leverage with the Spurs? Is the leverage with Sacramento? Is the leverage with Fox and his agent? I believe that the Spurs have more leverage than we probably give them credit for. That's the thing. Alex coming in saying, good morning. Space Invaders says, Vassell, 4 first-rounders and 5 second-round picks. Make it happen. Well, you know what's interesting about that is you look at those picks and you go, well, that's a lot of draft capital. If that keeps Sochan and Castle, maybe, just maybe. I mean, tell me in the chat right now. I want you guys to tell me, let's say that next year the Spurs trotted out there a starting lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Wemby, Sochan, and Barnes. I want everybody on the thread right now to tell me how many wins out of 82 that team gets. Because I'll tell you what I think that team gets. That team gets 50 wins. A Wemby in his 3rd year with a De'Aaron Fox in his prime, with Stephon Castle coming off a Rookie of the Year campaign, with Jeremy Sochan feeling a little bit more comfortable, not having to do everything, with Barnes being the Toyota Corolla that he is. How many wins does he get? Sam Salinas says 43. Safe Space says 51. JHNSB says 40-plus wins. Jordan says 55 to 60. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about picks? We're talking about picks that might turn into the next Malachi Branham, that might turn into the next Blake Wesley or Lucas Samanic. These picks at 17 and beyond, 15 and beyond, are all just crapshoots, man. The only valuable Spurs picks that we have right now are our own and Atlanta's. Everybody else's that we have, Charlotte's, Chicago's, Boston's, all of those that we have over the course of 2026 through 2030 are all just trash. Minnesota's is also trash. And I believe, here's the thing, I believe, and Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs and Ken's 5 might be able to correct me on this one. I believe the Spurs have a Sacramento Kings swap, like in 2030, 2031 or 32, that they can actually be trading for their own pick pack. So would you care about that? It's kind of like Kevin Costner in Draft Day. We want all our effing picks back. Chris Gonzalez asks the question, if the Spurs get Fox, what's next? A shooter or a big to help Wemby when he sits? Leia, bring me Giannis. Sith coming out and saying the deal breaker for me is reports saying that Fox would sign an extension with SA. Let's get it. 55 wins, baby. SR21, 2001, saying 44 wins and lethal. So we're all in agreement here, right? We're all in agreement that De'Aaron Fox coming to San Antonio makes this team a playoff team. So who cares if Devin Vassell is gone? Who cares if Keldon Johnson's gone? Who cares about these picks? Who cares about Sochan? And as Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs asked the question, is it a deal breaker if it's a Stephon Castle? It would absolutely suck. But the answer to that question is no, it's not a deal breaker. Not at all. But I tell you this much, Spurs are going to make a move in the next week or so because the draft deadline is next Thursday. So we are 8 days away from the deadline. And the Spurs will make a move somehow, some way. I know they are. I feel it. And Brian Wright typically does do trades. He flips players. The Spurs do have a couple of players that are on contract years. You know, you have Chris Paul, you have Trey Jones, and I mentioned this yesterday on the Area 210 podcast. Why do certain people think that we couldn't get a first rounder for a Chris Paul? Of course we could. There are some teams that are opposite of the Spurs. The Spurs seem to covet picks. The other teams don't. Why would a team that is in the playoffs trade for Chris Paul? It's because they know they're not going to get a good player at 25. They get Chris Paul. They have him play backup point guard in the playoffs. And on top of that, they get his contract off the books. Frees up $10 million in cap space, 10.5. And then that player that they would have drafted. When you draft a player in the first round, they are mandated to be on your team. So you take that 10.5 and that 2.5, and now you've cleared up $13 million in cap space. So a team like the Lakers, a team like the Suns, a team like the Heat, a team like the Knicks, they covet cap space. They don't care about the number 25 pick in the draft like we do. They want to have the free agent cap space. That's what they do. Thank you so much to everybody who's reaching out to us, by the way. Our chat is powered by MCS General Contracting. Leah asking the question, what happens if Brian Wright trades players for just stupid picks and bad contracts? I suppose you're still getting capital, right, if you get picks. I mean, you got to hope that he at least one day pulls a trigger on something. Sam Salinas, mark the tape. Mike feels it. We'll touch on this next week. The reason why I feel it is because he does it. You do realize that Brian Wright has done a lot of trades. Those picks that the Spurs got from Atlanta, Charlotte, Chicago, Boston, Minnesota, Sacramento, and all those second rounders, those were all Brian Wright. So when I say I feel it, it's more than a feeling. It's not like the classic Boston song, More Than a Feeling. It's basically me understanding that that's his MO. He likes doing these trades on trade deadline week. He does. But the thing is that the trades have always been for draft capital. Are we actually going to flip the script and send out the draft capital to get a player back? That's what happens. That's what will happen. I miss Joe. I miss Joe. Joe's normally here just getting mad, dropping F-bombs. Have you noticed that about Joe recently? I love Joe, but man, Joe's become a potty mouth the last couple of weeks, man. I don't know what it is. He used to be nice, Joe, but he's become a bit of a potty mouth. A couple of things, other news and notes around the NBA and around the NFL. It's looking more and more like the New Orleans Saints might actually get Kellen Moore as the head coach of the upcoming season. Mike McCarthy, former Dallas Cowboys head coach, has taken his hat out of the ring. Part of it is Mickey Loomis, the GM over there for the Saints. A lot of people don't want to play for him. They think he's scatterbrained and he's an idiot, and I tend to agree. Long story short, Kellen Moore had a second interview. And what's funny about the whole situation is, whenever you have players that are or coaches that are in the playoffs and they can't do a in-person interview because they're still with their team. The Super Bowl is in New Orleans this year. So Kellen Moore with the Eagles was able to meet with the Saints because he was already in New Orleans. Makes it easier. Drew Show asking the question, what the heck is going on? Oh, Joe will be back tomorrow, if that's what you're asking about. Joe will be back tomorrow. Cool. Matt Lerman says, Mike's pop culture references always crack me up. My girlfriend says that she loves the fact that I do a podcast because she says I get my words out. She says that she hates my fun facts. She laughs, but she says it's that the podcast allows me to say things that I would normally say to her instead. Tim Gonzalez asking the question about what about Brittany Griner signing with the Atlanta Dream, Mike? Don't care. It's WNBA, man. If it ain't Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark, I don't care. If it ain't Kelsey Plum, I don't care. Now, Kelsey Plum, by the way, got traded. It was like they had like a superstar trade. It was like a 6-time All-Star and a 3-time All-Star and picks being traded. It was amazing, man, what's going on in the WNBA right now. Midtown saying, Mike's girl says he talks too much. Have you met me? Of course I do. Of course I do. Jeff Garcia says, Jimenez, if Wright whiffs on the deal for Fox, then what should be done? Well, are you saying to the like what should the Spurs do, or what should happen to Brian Wright? I mean, is Brian Wright on the clock? I mean, is he beloved inside that organization? I don't know. I don't have intel on that. He's got to do something at some point. There are a lot of Spurs fans out there who are like, well, let's just wait for De'Aaron Fox to become a free agent and maybe he'll sign with us then. By then, we're already in the final season of Wemby's contract. And that makes no sense to me. You got to give Wemby some ammunition, some people to play with. Midtown says, talk to your friends. That's why I'm here. You guys are my friends, right? I'm hoping anyway. Chris Gonzalez talking about Kelsey Plum and Cameron for the Sparks. Giving us Sparks. Imagine that going from Las Vegas to L.A. Tony says, then trust the process, Jeff. Trust the damn process. Drew Show with another super chat. You know what? Drew, you don't even ask for the Grito at all, man. Are we going to do the Grito today? Are we going to do that? Joe's not here, so I'm in control of the Grito. But comes out with another super chat. And by the way, we really do appreciate this. This helps keep the show going because it takes software. It takes certain things, certain programs for our show to keep going. Again, this doesn't pay our CPS bill. It doesn't pay our SAWS bill. What it does is that all of these super chats that come in pay for our technology. That's simply it. Drew Show says, pick a side. Either Castle will be the next SGA point guard, or you want this cryberry cast off from Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox. Their fans wanted to keep SGA. Well, SGA was with the Clippers, if I'm not mistaken. So that's different organization. So SGA played for the Clippers, his rookie campaign. I think he was a second-team all-rookie behind Luka Doncic. Came over to the OKC Thunder. Pick a side. I mean, what side is there to pick, man? In 3 or 4 years, Castle might become as good as De'Aaron Fox. Now, I mean, I think Castle has the ability to become a better defender than De'Aaron Fox, despite the fact that Fox did lead the league in steals last year. But it's one of those things where this could just simply be an experiment. And why not experiment? For all of those who are saying, well, what happens if De'Aaron Fox comes to the Spurs for a season and a half and then turns down a $45, $50 million offer to stay with the team? Then what then? Well, at least you knew what. At least you had an experiment with Wemby with an all-star level player. I don't think that that's bad. Just because you're an all-star or you have two all-stars together doesn't mean that it works together. It's an experiment. Look at those picks that we got from the Atlanta Hawks, right? Where's DeJounte Murray now? Is DeJounte Murray playing with Atlanta? No, because the all-star that was DeJounte Murray and the all-star that was Trae Young didn't work well together. Okay? Sometimes just because you're two talents doesn't mean that it works. Wouldn't you want to know that if you are R.C. Buford? If you were Brian Wright, wouldn't you want to know what works well with Wemby, what brings out the best of him? Because I'm going to tell you what doesn't bring out the best of Wemby, a 39-year-old point guard. I love Chris Paul. Okay, he has done better than what I thought. He's been healthier than what I thought with this team. But do you think he's going to get the best out of Wemby? Do you think a first-year Stephon Castle is going to get the best out of Wemby? No. A point guard who's been in the league for so long, who's respected in the league, who's an all-star, and again, one-time all-star, right? You put that guy on the Knicks, you put him on the Clippers, the Lakers, you put him on Golden State, guess what? That guy's a 5 or 6-time all-star. 5 or 6-time all-star. It's kind of that corollary I talk about when it comes to like Derek Jeter and Paul Molitor. If Paul Molitor and Robin Yount, who played for the Brewers, played for the Yankees, they'd be all-time greats. They'd be legends, right? They're Hall of Famers, yes, but they'd be legends, right? But it's about the pinstripes, right? The Yankees have players that are completely overrated throughout their entire career, but because they played for the Yankees and they played in the media market that is New York, they are seen as being better than what they were, okay? Paul Molitor was a better shortstop, better infielder than Derek Jeter. Facts. It was different, right? You look at the NBA, though, De'Aaron Fox trying to make the All-Star team when he's sitting behind Luka Doncic, when he's sitting behind Chris Paul, when he's sitting behind Devin Booker, when he's sitting behind Steph Curry. It's like glass ceiling was right there. He goes to the East Coast. He's making All-Stars every year. On the West Coast, if he was playing for a big market team, he would have 3 or 4 All-Star teams book it because he didn't make the All-Star team averaging 26, 27 points per game. That's criminal. That's stupid. But you know why that happened? It's because he plays for Sacramento, dude. He plays for Sacramento. Drew Show says Spurs never, ever, ever, ever get these kind of free agents. Never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Forever, ever? Forever, ever? JNHBCC, Tony Nallis comes out and says JHNSB says that he graduated from Career Point as an amateur Spurs analyst. Fantastic. It's kind of hard to transition to other things, man. I saw that story about Bruno Mars where he's talking about the fact that he owes $50 million to MGM Grand. I found that to be funny. Other news was Kendrick Lamar has confirmed that he's actually going to go after Drake at the Super Bowl halftime show. That's going to be fun. Taking a look at the standings right now. Again, the Spurs right now are going to be back in action tomorrow. Spurs have a couple of home games here in San Antonio, a few home games here in San Antonio before they start the rodeo road trip. They're going to have 10 out of 12 games on the road. Actually, the Spurs play the Clippers tonight, rather. I thought it was tomorrow. Spurs play the Clippers tonight here at the Frost Bank Center. The Clippers favored by 3.5 points. You get plus 140 money line on the Spurs. Over-unders 220, so they're expecting a low-scoring game out there at the Frost Bank Center. Take a look at the Bulls. The Bulls are on the road against the Celtics. Why do we care about the Bulls? We need the Bulls to win more games so that we can potentially get their pick. Matt Laramie saying Spurs play tonight. That is correct. I corrected myself when it comes to that. That is tonight. Tip-off of that game is going to be at 7 p.m. Atlanta plays Cleveland tomorrow, baby, on the road. No Jalen Johnson. Is Jalen Johnson's injury out? Like, is he out for good? Is he out for like ever for the rest of the year? Look at Jalen Johnson's stats right now. Jalen Johnson has missed the last 4 games, averages 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. What a good player for that team. Those are all career highs for Jalen Johnson. But his injury seems to be more serious than initially thought. According to CBS Sports, an hour ago, it was reported that Jalen Johnson His breakout season is reportedly over. Shams Charania of ESPN is reporting that the 23-year-old suffered a shoulder injury and that he's going to have season-ending surgery to repair the damage. Jalen Johnson averaging 19 points, also averages a steal and a half per game. People asking the question, how are they doing so well post DeJounte Murray? It's because Jalen Johnson's doing so well. Don't forget to follow Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs and Ken's 5. I will be the guest tomorrow on the Locked On Spurs podcast. Shams Charania was on ESPN earlier today, confirming that the Spurs are De'Aaron Fox's preferred destination. Anthony Davis, according to Shams, is going to be reevaluated in 1 week due to an abdominal muscle strain. So there goes your Defensive Player of the Year hopes. So I know we've talked about just the main topic being the Spurs, right? Let me ask you this question here. What happens if De'Aaron Fox becomes an all-star after the Spurs trade for him? What if they name him to the team? Does he wear a Spurs jersey or is it Western Conference jerseys? What is he going to be getting? Head of a fist saying, get better guess. Hey, do better. SR 2001 saying, Drew Show with a proverbial, we're San Antonio. We never get any free agents. We never get any major sports franchises. Crappy attitude, as always, he says. Greg comes out and asks a question. Is Fox a point guard? I mean, he's a guard. He's a combo. You can play him as the point. And one of the things that Sacramento did over the years was that they drafted a lot of point guards over the years simply because they believed in the philosophy of drafting the best player available in the draft, irrespective of their position. And that was kind of a weird thing. Drew Show comes out, firing back, saying, y'all going to be really upset when they trade Council. Fox and Council make all-star teams after all-star year after year after year. Okay. What happens if Council makes an all-star team? Has that happened in Spurs history? Have the Spurs ever traded a player that became a future all-star? I mean, I've been a Spurs fan my entire life. I got to think about that. I know that they traded players who became all-stars, but they were all-stars here. Like when the Spurs traded Kawhi Leonard, when they were forced in that situation. I mean, look at that right there. Kawhi Leonard was an all-NBA player, first team, top 5 player in the league. When he wanted out of San Antonio, he was able to get out of San Antonio because he had all the leverage in the world. All he had to say was, what did Kawhi say? I'm just not going to re-sign with you guys. So get something for me. Now he wanted to go to LA, and the Spurs ended up sending them to Toronto. He wanted a chip over there. But that's the leverage we're talking about here. If De'Aaron Fox does not want to go back to Sacramento, the Kings have no leverage. The Kings can't sit there and go, oh, we're just going to keep you till the rest of your contract. No, they need to get somebody for him. And if they wait till next year to trade him, and it's a 1-year rental or a half-season rental, the haul that they get in return gets lower and lower and lower. So all the leverage in the world right now belongs to DeAndre Fox. And if Fox says he wants to come to San Antonio, that means San Antonio has more leverage than everybody else. So the Spurs can make a play. Do I want them to get rid of Sochan or Castle? No, I don't. But it shouldn't be a deal breaker because we need to see how this guy plays, how this guy being Wemby plays with all-stars. We don't have any all-star caliber players on our team. We just don't. And I'm looking at the Spurs roster right now, and everybody is replaceable except for Wemby. Castle has the highest ceiling. Can he become an all-star down the road? Yes. But look at the Spurs right now. When was the last time the Spurs got rid of a player that just suddenly became an all-star elsewhere? Because I can't think of one. Maybe there has been one. I mean, Derek White blossomed in Boston, but we knew he was a good player over here. Kawhi was already an all-star when we got rid of him. DeMar DeRozan was already an all-star before he got here, and after we got rid of him. So I'm just looking at it this way. Is it going to be weird is it possible? Is it possible that Castle becomes an all-star down the road? It is possible. Because who would have thought Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would have been an all-star after his first year? Yes, he was second-team All-NBA, All-NBA rookie his first season. But I'm going to go over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's first year in the NBA. His first year in the NBA, back in 2018, 2019, he played 26 minutes per game, which is kind of like what Castle's been playing. He averaged 10.8 points per game, 1 steal, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? Sounds like Castle. Castle's doing the exact same stat line. On top of that, Castle, just like SGA, got mentored by Chris Paul. So that is a fear, Drew, that if we got rid of Castle, that he could develop into an all-star like SGA. But the bird in the hand is the fact that you have an all-star that wants to come over here. Drew coming out, he's firing on all cylinders today, saying, quote, you want this guy is a one-time all-star reserve to come here with a bad attitude and coaches and systems just because they need Wemby to have a guy and have somebody hold Wemby's hand. Yeah. I'd have a bad attitude too if I played in Sacramento. I'd have a bad attitude too if I lived in Sacramento. But again, what is the big difference? He's from Texas. He's from Katy. His wife is from San Antonio. They have ties to San Antonio. They have ties to this part of Texas. Maybe life is better when you're happy. Maybe life is better when you're home. Maybe life is better when your wife is happy, right? If she wants to come back home to San Antonio, and oh, by the way, we just happen to have the next generational talent in Victor Wembanyama, why not do it? Why not do it? Everyone, it's been a fun show. It's interesting going by myself and doing a show by myself. It's been a while since I've done that, especially since I had no commercial breaks like I did back in the Star back in the day. Don't forget again, MCS General Contracting. Give them a call at 210-774-9155 for your concrete placement needs. They do an amazing job. They did some work at my house that I highly, highly recommend what they do. Slabs, parking lots, driveways, pickleball courts, basketball courts. Give them a call, 210-774-9155. Don't forget Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs. Subscribe for your daily Spurs content. More than 5,500 subscribers on YouTube. You can also catch him on Spotify, Kens5.com app as well. I noticed that Joe Garcia, when he was on Locked On Spurs earlier this week with Jeff, they had it on the main page at Kens5.com. So that was pretty interesting. Give me a call if you have questions about investments or insurances, 210-508-0369. I've been in financial services for 19 years. I do retirement planning, life insurance, disability, long-term care. I do benefits for companies, things like that, 210-508-0369. Hope everyone has a fantastic day. We're going to be back tomorrow, me and Joe. So we'll have 2 people tomorrow. And again, we hope to see you again tomorrow. Thank you for the Super Chats, Drew Show. We appreciate it. Hit the like button on the way out. Peace out. Go Spurs, go.